The old man on the park bench. He had nothing, yet gave me everything. I met him on a Tuesday. An old man. A stranger. Sitting alone on a park bench with nothing but a paper bag and a smile that didn't belong to someone who had lost everything. I didn't know it then. But that day would change my life forever. It was late October, and the world had that golden, melancholy glow that comes just before winter steals all the color away. The kind of afternoon where the air smells like wet leaves and distant wood smoke, and every breath feels like a memory you can't quite place. I was 32 years old. Successful, by most measures. I had the job, the apartment, the car, the life everyone told me I was supposed to want. But I was tired. Not the kind of tired sleep that can be fixed. The kind that settles deep in your bones, that makes you feel like you're walking through your own life as a stranger. I'd stopped feeling things somewhere along the way. Stopped noticing sunsets. Stopped laughing at jokes. Stopped calling my mother back. I was hollow. That's why I was in the park that day. I'd left work early, told them I had a dentist appointment. I just needed to breathe. To sit. To exist somewhere that didn't demand anything from me. And that's when I saw him. He was sitting on the last bench near the pond, the one nobody ever uses because it's too far from the path and the wood is rotting in places. He wore a coat that had seen better decades, brown, fraying at the cuffs, and patched at the elbows with mismatched fabric. His shoes were scuffed beyond recognition, held together more by habit than stitching. Next to him sat a wrinkled paper bag. That was it. That was everything he had. But what struck me wasn't what he didn't have. It was his face. He was smiling. Not a bitter, ironic smile. Not the vacant grin of someone who'd given up. A real smile. The kind you see on children watching snow fall for the first time. I didn't plan to stop. I was just going to walk past, maybe nod politely, and keep moving. But something made me pause. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was loneliness. Or maybe it was something else entirely. Beautiful afternoon, isn't it? His voice was warm and weathered, like an old leather book you find in your grandfather's attic. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking out at the pond, where two ducks were gliding across the still water, leaving gentle ripples behind them. I hesitated. In the city, you don't talk to strangers. You especially don't talk to homeless men on park benches. But something about his tone wasn't asking for anything. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't a preamble to a request. It was just an observation. Yeah, I said quietly. It is. He nodded, still smiling. Mind if I share it with you? I blinked. Share what? He gestured to the bench beside him. The view. The moment. This little pocket of peace we've stumbled into. I almost laughed. Almost. Because the way he said it, like the bench was a treasure, like the moment was sacred, it caught me off guard. I sat down. For a long time, we didn't speak. We just sat there, two strangers on a rotting bench, watching ducks paddle in circles and leaves drift lazily from the trees. And then he said something I wasn't expecting. You look like you're carrying the world on your shoulders, son. I turned to him, startled. He still wasn't looking at me. His eyes were fixed on the water, soft and distant, like he was seeing something far beyond the pond. I'm fine, I said automatically. The lie came easy. I'd been saying it for months. He nodded slowly. Fine. That's a heavy word, isn't it? For letters that don't mean anything at all. I didn't respond. I didn't know how. He reached into his paper bag, slowly, deliberately, and pulled out half a sandwich. White bread and something that looked like peanut butter. He tore it carefully down the middle and held one piece out to me. Hungry? I stared at the sandwich. At his trembling hand. At the sincerity in his eyes. No, I'm okay. You should. I insist, he said gently. It's not much. But it's enough to share. And there it was. A moment so small. So simple. And yet it cracked something open inside me. This man, This stranger with nothing was offering me half of the only meal he had. Not because he wanted something. Not because he had to. But because somehow, in his world, sharing mattered more than keeping. I took the sandwich. His name was Samuel. I learned that over the next 20 minutes, as we sat together eating stale peanut butter sandwiches and watching the world turn golden around us. He didn't offer his story right away, didn't dump his life into my lap like so many do when they're desperate to be heard. He just talked. About the ducks. About how the smaller one always followed the bigger one, like they were dancing. About the oak tree at the edge of the pond that had been there since he was a boy. I used to climb that tree, he said, his eyes twinkling with a memory I couldn't see. My brother and I. We'd race to the top. He always won. Always. Where's your brother now? I asked. Samuel's smile softened. Gone. A long time ago. He didn't elaborate. I didn't need to. The weight of that single word, gone, said everything. I'm sorry, I said. He shook his head. Don't be. I got to love him. That's more than some people ever get. I sat with that for a moment. Got to love him. Like love itself was the reward. Not the keeping. Just the having, even if only for a while. What about you? He asked, turning to me for the first time. His eyes were pale blue, clear as glass, and when they looked at you, it felt like they saw more than your face. They saw you. What about me? What brings a young man with shiny shoes and a heavy heart to a forgotten bench in the middle of a workday? I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. That obvious, huh? Only to someone who's been there. And just like that, the wall I'd been building for months started to crack. I don't know why I told him. Maybe because he was a stranger. Maybe because he didn't look at me with pity or judgment. Maybe because, for the first time in a long time, someone had actually asked. I told him about the job that paid well but drained me dry. About the promotion I didn't want but couldn't refuse. About the apartment, I lived in it alone because I'd stopped trying to connect with anyone. About my father, who'd called me 3 times that week, and I hadn't answered once because I didn't know what to say to him anymore. I just feel lost, I admitted, the words catching in my throat. Like I'm doing everything right, but none of it means anything. Samuel nodded slowly, like he'd heard this story 1,000 times before. You know what the problem is with doing everything right? He said quietly. I looked at him. You forget to do anything real. The words hit me like a stone dropped into still water. Ripples spreading outward, disturbing everything. I don't understand, I said. He smiled, that same gentle, knowing smile. You will. Over the next hour, Samuel told me his story. Not all at once. Not in some grand confession. Just in pieces. Small, tender pieces that fit together like a quilt made from scraps. He'd been a teacher once. History. Taught for 30 years at a school just a few miles from the park. He spoke about his students the way other people speak about their children. With pride, with warmth, and with a light in his eyes that hadn't dimmed despite everything else. I loved that job, he said. Not because of the salary, Lord knows it wasn't much, but because every day I got to watch young minds wake up. Got to see them realize they mattered. That their story mattered. What happened? I asked carefully. He looked down at his hands, gnarled, spotted with age, trembling slightly. Life happened. My wife got sick. Cancer. We spent everything we had trying to fight it. Everything. The house. The savings. Even the little things we thought we'd keep forever. He paused, his voice softer now. She fought for 3 years. 3 long, hard years. And when she finally went, I realized I had nothing left. No home. No savings. No her. My chest tightened. Samuel, He held up a hand, still smiling. Don't feel sorry for me, son. I got 42 years with the love of my life. I got to hold her hand every single day of that fight. I got to tell her I loved her one last time before she closed her eyes. His voice cracked, just barely. That's more than nothing. That's everything. I felt something wet on my cheek. I wiped it away quickly, embarrassed. But Samuel didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he did, and he was kind enough to pretend he didn't. After she passed, he continued, I didn't really see the point in trying to rebuild. Didn't have the energy. Didn't have the heart. So I just let go. Let the world take what it wanted. And I ended up here. Here? I asked. On this bench? He chuckled. Not just this bench. This life. This version of me. No home. No money. No plan. He looked out at the pond again, his expression peaceful. And you know what I found? What? Freedom. I frowned. Freedom? Freedom, he repeated. When you have nothing left to lose, you stop being afraid. You stop performing. You stop pretending. You just are. And in that space, that terrifying, beautiful space, you remember what actually matters. And what's that? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He turned to me, his pale blue eyes locking onto mine. People. Moments. Kindness. The way the light looks on water. The sound of a stranger's laugh. The feeling of giving someone half your sandwich even though it's all you have. He smiled. That's it. That's the whole secret. Everything else? Just noise. I sat there, frozen, feeling like someone had just pulled back a curtain I didn't know was covering my life. Everything else is just noise. How long had I been drowning in noise? How many years had I spent chasing things that looked important but felt empty? Climbing ladders that led nowhere. Filling my calendar with obligations that drained me. Surrounding myself with people I didn't really know, in places I didn't really want to be. And here was this man with nothing, telling me he'd found freedom in the losing. I don't think I could do that, I said quietly. Let go like that. I'd be terrified. Samuel nodded. Most people are. We're taught from birth to hold on. To accumulate. To build walls around ourselves made of things and titles and accomplishments. We think that's what keeps us safe. Doesn't it? He shook his head slowly. No, son. It just keeps us isolated. Keeps us from feeling the very things that make us human. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, a photograph, creased and faded, the edges worn soft from years of handling. He held it gently, like it might dissolve if he gripped too hard. This is all I kept, he said, showing it to me. It was a wedding photo. A young Samuel in a simple suit, his arm around a woman in a white dress. She was beautiful, not in the glossy, magazine way, but in the way that real people are beautiful. Her smile was genuine, her eyes full of light. And young Samuel was looking at her like she'd hung the moon and stars just for him. Martha, he said softly. 42 years, 2 months, and 16 days. I counted everyone. I stared at the photograph. At the love captured there, frozen in time. Why this? I asked. Why keep only this? Because this, he said, running his thumb over her face. This reminds me of what I'm made of. Not the things I lost. Not the house or the job or the money. This reminds me that I was capable of loving someone so completely that losing everything else didn't matter. He tucked the photo back into his pocket, right over his heart. That's the thing about love, he continued. Real love. The kind that costs you something. It doesn't disappear when the person does. It stays with you. Changes you. Makes you better than you were before. My throat was tight. Do you ever regret it? Spending everything? Ending up here? Samuel looked at me with such clarity, such absolute certainty, that I felt it in my bones. Not for one single second. We sat in silence after that. But it wasn't an awkward silence. It was the kind of silence that feels full, heavy with things that don't need to be said, with understanding that exists beyond words. The sun was starting to dip lower, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. The park was emptying out, joggers heading home, parents gathering their children, the world preparing for evening. But Samuel and I stayed. "Can I ask you something?" I said finally. "Anything. How do you do it? How do you sit here, with nothing, and still smile like that? Like you've got some secret the rest of us don't know?" He laughed, a genuine, warm sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep and true. "It's not a secret, son. It's just a choice." "A choice? Every morning I wake up," he said, "and I choose to see what I have instead of what I don't. I choose to talk to people instead of hiding from them. I choose to notice the small miracles, the way a bird lands on a branch, the smell of rain coming, the fact that my heart is still beating and my lungs are still breathing." He gestured around us. "Look at this place. Really look at it." I did. The golden light filtering through the trees. The gentle movement of the water. The way the breeze made the leaves whisper secrets to each other. "Most people walk through the world like they're already dead," Samuel said quietly. "They're so busy worrying about tomorrow or regretting yesterday that they miss the only moment that actually exists. Right now. This one. And then it's gone, and they wonder where their life went." He turned to me again. "I have nothing, you're right about that. No home to go to tonight. No bank account. No guarantee of where my next meal comes from. But right now, I have this sunset. I have this conversation. I have the memory of my wife's laugh and the knowledge that I loved her well. I have the satisfaction of sharing my sandwich with someone who needed it, even if he didn't know he needed it." His eyes crinkled at the corners. "That's not nothing. That's everything." I felt something break open inside me. Something that had been locked up tight for so long I'd forgotten it was there. "I don't know how to do that," I whispered. "I don't know how to be like you." "You don't need to be like me," Samuel said gently. "You just need to be yourself. Your real self. Not the version you think you're supposed to be. Not the person your job or your parents or society told you to become. Just you. I don't even know who that is anymore. Then maybe it's time to find out." The sky was turning purple now, streaked with pink. The first stars were beginning to appear, shy and tentative, in the gathering dusk. "I should probably go," I said, though I didn't move. I didn't want to move. Samuel nodded. "Probably." But neither of us stood up. "Samuel," I said after a moment, "where will you sleep tonight?" He shrugged. "There's a shelter about a mile from here. If they have room, I'll sleep there. If not, there's an underpass that stays dry when it rains." My heart clenched. "That's not... I mean, isn't there somewhere else? Someone who can help?" "I'm fine, son. Been doing this for 3 years now. You learn to adapt." "But what if..." I stopped myself. "What if what? What if it gets cold? What if something happens? What if you need help? What if I never see you again?" That last thought surprised me. When had this stranger become someone I cared about losing? "What if you stayed with me tonight?" The words were out before I could stop them. Samuel looked at me, surprised. "With you? I have a spare room. Well, technically an office, but there's a couch. And heat. And a shower. And food." I was talking fast now, urgency creeping into my voice. "Just for tonight. Just so you don't have to." "That's very kind," Samuel interrupted gently. "But I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition. It's..." I searched for the right words. "It's me wanting to share something. The way you shared your sandwich with me." He studied me for a long moment, those clear blue eyes seeing straight through to whatever I was really asking. Which wasn't just about a place to sleep. It was about connection. About not wanting this moment to end. About not wanting to go back to my empty apartment and my hollow life and pretend this conversation never happened. Finally, he smiled. "All right. Just for tonight." Relief washed over me, so powerful it surprised me. We stood up together, him moving slowly, stiffly, like his bones ached. I instinctively reached out to steady him, and he took my arm without protest. As we walked toward my car, Samuel paused by the oak tree he told me about earlier. He placed his hand on the rough bark, gentle and reverent, like greeting an old friend. "Still here," he murmured. "Still standing. Did you really climb this?" I asked. "All the way to the top. Me and Jimmy, racing like our lives depended on it." He smiled at the memory. I can still hear him laughing. That's the funny thing about memory. It doesn't fade the way you think it will. The important things stay sharp. Clear. Like they happened yesterday. "What else do you remember?" I asked softly. He was quiet for a moment, his hands still on the tree. "I remember the day Martha said yes. We were sitting on a different bench, in a different park, and I was so nervous I almost couldn't get the words out. But she just smiled, that smile, and said, 'I thought you'd never ask.' Like she'd been waiting. Like she knew all along." His voice grew softer. "I remember our first apartment. Tiny place, barely room for both of us. The heat didn't work right, and the neighbors were loud, and the walls were so thin you could hear everything. But it was ours. And every night, we'd lie in bed and talk about the future. About the life we'd build. The places we'd go. The things we'd do." He paused. "We didn't do most of those things. Life got in the way. Bills and jobs and responsibilities. But you know what? It didn't matter. Because every single day, I got to wake up next to her. And that was better than any adventure we could have planned." I felt tears stinging my eyes again. "You really loved her." Samuel looked at me, and his smile was bittersweet. "Love. Present tense. Death doesn't end that. It just changes the shape of it." The drive to my apartment was quiet. Samuel sat in the passenger seat, looking out the window at the passing city lights like a child seeing them for the first time. Every few blocks, he'd point something out, a storefront he remembered from years ago, a street corner where something meaningful had happened, or a building that used to be something else. "That was a bookstore," he said, pointing to what was now a chain coffee shop. "Martha and I spent hours there. She loved mysteries. I loved history. We'd each pick a book for the other, and then we'd go home and read them aloud. It took us forever to finish anything, but God, it was wonderful." I tried to imagine it. Two people so in love that reading books aloud to each other was entertainment. In my world, everyone was too busy scrolling, streaming, and consuming content alone even when they were together. When had we lost that? The simple intimacy of shared attention? When we got to my building, I felt suddenly self-conscious. The lobby was all glass and steel, sterile and expensive. The doorman nodded at me, barely looked at Samuel, but I saw the flicker of judgment in his eyes. I wanted to say something. Defend Samuel somehow. But Samuel didn't seem to notice. Or maybe he noticed and simply didn't care. In the elevator, he whistled softly, some old tune I didn't recognize, but that sounded like it belonged in a different era, a gentler time. My apartment was on the 14th floor. When I opened the door and flicked on the lights, I saw it the way Samuel must have seen it, cold, modern, expensive, and utterly devoid of personality. Bare walls, minimal furniture, everything in shades of gray and white. No photos. No art. No evidence that an actual human lived here. "Nice place," Samuel said politely. "It's functional," I replied, suddenly embarrassed. He walked slowly through the living room, taking it in. He paused by the window, floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the city. "Beautiful view," he said. "Yeah. That's what sold me on it. Have you ever looked at it?" The question caught me off guard. "What? The view? Do you ever actually stop and look at it? Or is it just there?" I opened my mouth to answer, then closed it. Because the truth was, I couldn't remember the last time I'd actually looked out that window. Really looked. The view was just the background. Wallpaper for a life I barely lived. "I guess I don't," I admitted. Samuel nodded, unsurprised. He stood there for a moment, hands in his pockets, gazing out at the glittering sprawl of lights. Millions of people out there, he said quietly. Each one lives a whole life. Loving, struggling, hoping, hurting. All those stories happening at the same time, and we never know most of them. He turned to me. Makes you feel small, doesn't it? In a good way. Reminds you you're part of something bigger. I made dinner that night. Nothing fancy, just pasta with Jared sauce, a salad from a bag, and some bread I'd forgotten was in the freezer. The kind of meal that screamed, "Bachelor who doesn't cook." But Samuel ate it like it was a feast. "Delicious," he said, and I could tell he meant it. Not because the food was good, but because the act of sharing it was. We sat at my kitchen table, a sleek, modern thing I'd bought because it looked good in the catalog but had never actually been used for its intended purpose. I usually ate standing at the counter, scrolling through my phone, barely tasting anything. But tonight, we sat across from each other. No phones. No TV in the background. Just two people, eating and talking, like humans used to do before we forgot how. "When did you stop calling your father?" Samuel asked suddenly. I nearly choked on my pasta. "How did you?" "You mentioned it earlier. In the park. Said he'd called 3 times this week." I set down my fork, my appetite suddenly gone. "Yeah. Why haven't you called back?" I shrugged, defensive. "I've been busy. Work is crazy right now, and I just..." "That's not why." His voice wasn't accusatory. Just knowing. Like he could see the lie before I'd even finished telling it. I slumped back in my chair. I don't know what to say to him anymore. Every conversation feels like a performance. Like I have to prove I'm doing okay, that I made the right choices, and that I'm living up to whatever he expected of me. And I'm so tired of performing. Samuel nodded slowly. "What do you think he wants to hear?" "That I'm successful. Happy. That the sacrifices he made, putting me through school, working 2 jobs, were worth it." "And what do you want to tell him?" I opened my mouth. I closed it. The truth sat heavy on my tongue, terrifying. "That I'm not happy," I whispered. "That I'm lonely. That I don't know what I'm doing with my life. That I feel like I'm failing at everything that actually matters, even though on paper I'm succeeding at everything I'm supposed to care about." My voice cracked. But I can't tell him that. Because what if he's disappointed? What if all those sacrifices were for nothing? Samuel reached across the table and placed his weathered hand over mine. His skin was rough, warm, and steady. "Son, let me tell you something about fathers. The thing we want most, the only thing that really matters, is knowing our children are okay. Not successful. Not impressive. Just okay. Happy. Connected to something real." His grip tightened slightly. "Your silence is breaking his heart more than any truth ever could." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt tears spilling over, hot and fast, and I couldn't stop them. I didn't want to stop them. "I don't know how to fix it," I said, my voice breaking. "I don't know how to fix any of it." "You don't fix it all at once," Samuel said gently. "You start small. You make 1 phone call. You tell 1 truth. You take 1 step toward the person you want to be instead of the person you think you should be." He squeezed my hand once more, then let go. "And you forgive yourself for all the steps you didn't take before now." After dinner, I showed Samuel to the spare room. I'd called it an office, but really it was just a room where I kept a desk I never used and boxes I'd never unpacked from my last move 3 years ago. There was a leather couch, expensive, uncomfortable, and bought more for appearance than function. "I'll get you some blankets," I said. "And towels. The bathroom is just down the hall. Make yourself at home." "This is perfect," Samuel said, running his hand along the couch. "Better than perfect." "Thank you." As I gathered linens from the hallway closet, I heard him moving around in the room. When I came back, I found him standing in front of the one personal item I'd left in there. A framed photo on the bookshelf, buried behind stacks of unread business books. It was a picture of me and my father. I was maybe 8 or 9, gap-toothed and grinning, sitting on his shoulders at some beach I barely remembered. He was younger than I am now, his face unlined, his smile wide and unguarded. I'd forgotten that photo was there. "Handsome man," Samuel said softly. "You have his eyes." I stepped beside him, looking at the photo as if seeing it for the first time. "Yeah, I guess I do." "When was this taken?" "I don't know. 25 years ago? Maybe more. Before my mom left. Before everything got complicated." Samuel was quiet for a moment. "Do you remember that day?" I stared at the photo, reaching back through the fog of years. I remember the water was cold. And he kept throwing me in the air and catching me, over and over, until I was screaming with laughter. And I remember feeling safe. Like nothing bad could ever happen because he was there. My throat tightened. "When did that change?" Samuel asked. "I don't know. Slowly. Gradually. He worked all the time after Mom left. Had to keep us afloat. And I grew up. Got independent. Stopped needing him the same way. And somewhere in there, we forgot how to talk to each other about anything real." I set the blankets down on the couch. "Now when we talk, it's just surface stuff. Weather. Work. Safe topics. Like we're strangers who happen to share DNA." Samuel turned to me. "It's not too late, you know. Isn't it? Not unless one of you is dead. And even then," he smiled sadly, "even then, you'd be surprised what conversations you can still have." He picked up the photo, holding it gently. "This moment right here, this is what he remembers when he thinks of you. Not your job title. Not your apartment. This. The sound of your laughter. The weight of you on his shoulders. The feeling of being your whole world." He set the photo back down. "Call him tomorrow." It wasn't a question. It was a gentle command. The kind a father might give. "What do I say?" "The truth. Start with that. Everything else will follow." I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the entire day in my mind. The park bench. The sandwich. Samuel's stories. His wife. His choices. His freedom. His joy, despite everything. Around 2 in the morning I got up. The apartment was dark and quiet. I padded down the hallway toward the kitchen, intending to get water, but I stopped when I saw light coming from under the spare room door. I knocked softly. "Samuel? You okay? Come in, son." I opened the door. He was sitting on the couch, still fully dressed, the photograph of Martha in his hands. His face was wet with tears, but he was smiling. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "You're not interrupting anything," he said, gesturing to the space beside him. "Can't sleep either?" I sat down. "No." We were quiet for a moment. Then Samuel spoke, his voice soft in the darkness. "I talk to her, you know. Every night. Tell her about my day. About the people I meet. About the moments that mattered." He looked at the photo. "Some people would say that's crazy. Talking to someone who isn't there." "I don't think it's crazy," I said. No. I think it's love." He smiled, fresh tears spilling over. "You're learning." He wiped his face with the back of his hand, unashamed of the emotion. "You want to know the truth about losing everything?" he said. "The real truth?" I nodded. "It's terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. For the first 6 months after Martha died, after I lost the house, I wanted to die too. Couldn't see the point in continuing. Couldn't imagine a life that made sense without her in it." His voice wavered but didn't break. "I spent a lot of nights under that underpass, in the cold and the dark, asking God, or the universe, or whoever might be listening, why I was still here. What possible purpose could there be for a broken old man with nothing to offer?" He turned to look at me. "And then I met someone. A young woman, sitting on a park bench, crying. And I offered her half my sandwich. And we talked. And she told me later, months later, when I saw her again, that conversation saved her life. That she'd been planning to end it that day, but talking to me reminded her that kindness still existed. That connection was still possible. My breath caught. I didn't know, he continued. I had no idea. I was just being present. Just sharing what I had. But that's when I understood. Understood what? That we're not here to accumulate. We're not here to achieve or impress or build monuments to ourselves. We're here to witness each other. To see each other. To remind each other that we're not alone in this strange, beautiful, terrifying experience of being alive. He held up the photograph. Martha taught me that. Every single day of our marriage, she saw me. Really saw me. Not the teacher or the provider or the role I was playing. Just me. Samuel. With all my flaws and fears and foolish dreams. And she loved that person. His voice grew stronger. That's the gift you give someone when you really see them. When you share your sandwich even though it's all you have. When you sit on a park bench and have a real conversation instead of walking past. When you call your father and tell him the truth instead of performing happiness you don't feel. He looked at me intently. That's what having nothing taught me. When you strip away all the armor, all the pretense, all the things you think define you, what's left is the only thing that ever mattered. Connection. Presence. Love in its most basic, radical form. I felt something shift inside me. Something fundamental and permanent. I don't want to live like this anymore, I whispered. Hollow. Disconnected. Half asleep from my own life. Then don't, Samuel said simply. But how do I? Where do I even start? He smiled. You already have. I woke up on the couch in the spare room, sunlight streaming through the window I'd forgotten had such a beautiful view of the eastern sky. Samuel was already awake, standing by the window, hands in his pockets, watching the city come to life. Morning, I said groggily. Good morning, he replied without turning. Did you know you can see the park from here? Just barely. That little patch of green between the buildings. I stood and joined him. He was right. If you knew where to look, you could just make out the edge of the pond and the tops of the trees. All this time, and I never noticed, I said. Most people don't. They're too busy looking at what's far away to see what's right in front of them. We stood there together, watching the sunrise paint the world in shades of gold and pink. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I actually felt it. The beauty. The moment. The quiet miracle of being alive to witness another day. I'm going to call him today, I said suddenly. My father. Samuel nodded. Good. I'm scared. That's how you know it matters. I made breakfast. Real breakfast this time. Eggs, toast, and coffee that didn't come from a pod. We ate slowly, savoring it, talking about small things and big things and everything in between. Samuel told me about his first day of teaching, how terrified he'd been, how he dropped his notes, and how the kids had laughed but not cruelly, just with the joy of seeing their teacher was human. I told him about the first time I realized I hated my job, how I'd been sitting in a conference room listening to people argue about quarterly projections and suddenly thought, is this all there is? What did you do? Samuel asked. Nothing. I just kept going. Told myself it would get better. That I just needed to push through. And did it? Get better? I shook my head. No. It got worse. Or maybe I just got more numb to it. Samuel set down his coffee cup. You know what courage is? What? Not the absence of fear. It's the willingness to be afraid and move forward anyway. To look at your life honestly and say, this isn't working, even when you don't know what comes next. He leaned forward. You're at a crossroads, son. I can see it. You can feel it. The question isn't whether you need to change. You already know you do. The question is whether you're brave enough to take that first step into the unknown. My hands were shaking slightly around my coffee mug. What if I fail? What if I give up everything and it turns out I was wrong, and I end up with nothing, and what if you don't? Samuel interrupted gently. What if you take that leap and discover who you actually are underneath all the expectations? What if you find something real? He smiled. Besides, nothing isn't as scary as you think. I should know. After breakfast, Samuel said he should be going. I've imposed long enough, he said, though his eyes were warm and grateful. You've been more than kind. You haven't imposed, I said quickly. You've given me something I didn't know I needed. And what's that? Permission. To be honest. To stop pretending. To want something different. Samuel pulled on his worn coat and patted his pocket to make sure Martha's photograph was there. That's not something I gave you, son. That was always yours. You just forgot you had it. We walked to the door together. I didn't want him to leave. Didn't want this bubble of clarity and connection to pop, leaving me alone in my hollow apartment with my hollow life. Will I see you again? I asked, hating how desperate I sounded. Maybe. If you come back to the park. He paused. But even if you don't, you'll carry what we talked about. It's yours now. The question is what you'll do with it. He put his hand on my shoulder, that same gentle, fatherly touch. Make the call. Tell the truth. Take the first step. And then he was gone. I stood in my apartment for a long time after he left, feeling the weight of his words, the gift of his presence, and the mirror he'd held up to my life. Then I picked up my phone. My father's number was right there, marked by 3 missed calls and a voicemail I hadn't listened to. My thumb hovered over it, heart pounding, every excuse and rationalization queuing up in my mind. He's probably busy. I'll call later. I should think about what to say first. Maybe tomorrow would be better. But then I heard Samuel's voice in my head. Your silence is breaking his heart more than any truth ever could. I pressed call. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Hello? His voice. Cautious. Surprised. Hey, Dad. It's me. A pause. I know. I can see your name. Another pause. Is everything okay? And there it was. That question. That automatic assumption that I only called when something was wrong. Because that's what our relationship had become. Actually, no, I said, my voice shaking. Everything's not okay. And I need to tell you the truth. Silence on the other end. I could picture him tensing, preparing for bad news. I'm not happy, Dad. I haven't been happy in a long time. The job you're so proud of? I hate it. This life I've built? It feels empty. And I've been lying to you, and to myself, pretending everything's fine because I didn't want to disappoint you. I was crying now, words tumbling out uncensored. You sacrificed so much for me. Worked so hard to give me opportunities. And I feel like I'm wasting them. Like I'm failing you. And that's why I haven't called. Because I didn't know how to tell you that your son, who has everything, feels like he has nothing. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then I heard it. A sound I hadn't heard in years. My father crying. Son, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You could never disappoint me. Never. Do you understand that? But all those sacrifices. I didn't make those sacrifices so you could be successful. He interrupted. I made them so you could be free. Free to choose your own path. Free to find your own happiness. Free to be who you actually are, not who you think you should be. His voice broke. And if I made you feel like success was what mattered, if I made you think you had to earn my love or my pride, then I failed you. Because you've had those things since the moment you were born. Unconditionally. No strings attached. I was sobbing now, the kind of crying that comes from a place so deep you didn't know it existed. I miss you, Dad. I miss us. I miss knowing how to talk to you. I miss you too, son. So much. Every single day. We talked for 2 hours. Really talked. About Mom leaving. About his loneliness. About my fears. About the gap that had grown between us and how we'd both been too scared to bridge it. About the photo on the beach. "I remember that day," he said. "You were so small. So fearless. You trusted me completely to catch you. And I remember thinking, I will never let this boy down. I will do whatever it takes to keep him safe and happy." He paused. "But somewhere along the way, I forgot that safety isn't the same as happiness. And control isn't the same as love. You didn't let me down," I said. "I just got lost. But I think I'm finding my way back." "Where do you want to go?" he asked. "If you could do anything, be anything, what would it look like?" And for the first time in years, I let myself imagine it. Really imagine it. A different job. Maybe teaching. Maybe writing. Something that felt meaningful. Something that involved actual people, actual connection, and actual purpose. A smaller apartment maybe, but one with plants and photos and evidence of a life being lived, not just existed through. Time. Time to walk in parks. Time to call my father. Time to notice sunsets and have real conversations and share sandwiches with strangers. A life that was mine. "I don't know exactly," I admitted. "But I know it's not this." "Then change it," my father said simply. "I'll support you. Whatever you decide. Whatever you need." "Really? Really? I just want you to be happy, son. That's all I've ever wanted." The next day, I went back to the park. I looked for Samuel everywhere, the bench by the pond, the oak tree, and the path along the water. I searched for hours, asking joggers and dog walkers if they'd seen an old man in a brown coat. No one had. I came back the next day, and the day after that. Every evening after work, I'd go to that bench and sit there, hoping he'd appear. He never did. After a week, I started to wonder if he'd been real. If the whole thing had been some kind of fever dream, a manifestation of my own desperate need for guidance. But then I'd remember the weight of his hand on mine. The taste of the sandwich we'd shared. The photograph of Martha. The way his eyes saw straight through to the truth. He was real. And even if I never saw him again, what he'd given me was real too. I gave my notice at work 2 weeks later. My boss was shocked. "You're making a huge mistake. You have a future here. A career." "I know," I said. "But it's not the future I want." I spent the next month tying up loose ends, saying goodbye to colleagues who'd never really been friends, and cleaning out a desk that had never felt like mine. And I applied to teaching programs. Started writing again, not corporate emails and project proposals, but real writing. Stories. Reflections. Things that came from somewhere true. I had dinner with my father every week. Sometimes we talked about important things. Sometimes we just watched baseball and shared comfortable silence. But we were present with each other. We were real. I moved to a smaller apartment with a balcony and a view of trees. I bought plants. Hung photos. Made it a home instead of just a place to sleep between obligations. And every Tuesday, I went to the park. Not because I expected to see Samuel, but because that bench, that pond, those trees, they'd become sacred to me. A reminder of the day my life changed. The day a stranger with nothing gave me everything. 6 months after that first meeting, on a Tuesday in late April, I was sitting on our bench. The world was green again. Alive. The harsh winter had passed, and everything was blooming, bursting, and celebrating the gift of another spring. I was reading a book, a real one, paper and ink, not a screen. And I was actually reading it, not just skimming while my mind wandered to work emails and obligations. "Beautiful afternoon, isn't it?" My heart stopped. I looked up, and there he was. Samuel. The same brown coat, more worn now. The same gentle smile. The same clear blue eyes that saw everything. "Samuel!" I stood up so fast I almost dropped my book. "Where have you been? I've been looking for you everywhere. I came here every week, and I asked around, and no one had seen you, and I thought." He raised a hand, chuckling. "Slow down, son. I'm here now. But where were you? He shrugged. Around. The shelter closed for renovations, so I've been staying at a place across town. Different routine, different parks. He studied my face. You look different. I am different. Because of you. Because of what you said. I quit my job. I'm teaching now, history actually, just like you did. And I'm writing. And I'm talking to my father. Really talking. And I paused, realizing the truth as I said it. I'm happy. For the first time in years, I'm actually happy. Samuel's smile grew wider, and I saw tears gathering in his eyes. That's all I wanted, he said softly. When I met you that day, I saw a young man who was drowning. And all I could do was remind you that you knew how to swim. He sat down on the bench, and I sat beside him. You did more than that, I said. You saved my life. No, son. You saved your own life. You made the call. You told the truth. You took the leap. I just held up a mirror. We sat there for a while, watching the ducks, different ducks, but doing the same eternal dance. The water was calm, reflecting the sky like glass. I brought you something, I said, reaching into my bag. I pulled out a package wrapped in brown paper. Inside was a new coat, warm, sturdy, and the right size. And a framed copy of that photograph from my apartment. Me and my father, beach and smiles and joy. I had a copy made, I explained. I wanted you to have it. As a reminder that the conversation we had, that you have with people, it echoes forward. It changes things. You changed me, and now I'm changing my relationship with my father, and he's lighter now. Happier. And that will ripple out to other people, and on and on. I placed the gifts in his hands. You said Martha taught you that we're here to witness each other. To see each other. Well, I see you, Samuel. And I want you to know that you matter. That your life, even with nothing, has meant everything to at least one person. Samuel looked at the photograph for a long time, tears streaming freely down his weathered face. Then he looked at me, and the love in his eyes was so pure, so complete, that I felt it in my soul. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for hearing what I was really saying. Thank you for being brave enough to change. Thank you for this. He held up the photograph. And thank you for reminding me why I keep going. Days like this, connections like this, they're what make it all worth it. We spent the rest of that afternoon together. Not talking about anything profound. Just being. Existing in the same space. Witnessing each other. He told me about a woman at the shelter who was learning to read at 60 years old, and how her face lit up when she finished her first book. I told him about a student in my class who'd been struggling, who'd stayed after to tell me that my teaching made him feel like history wasn't just dates and dead people, but actual lives that mattered. You're doing it, Samuel said proudly. You're seeing them. And they feel it. As the sun started to set, painting the sky in those familiar golds and pinks, Samuel stood up slowly. I should head back before it gets dark. Where are you staying? I can drive you. The shelter's reopened. It's not far. Samuel. I hesitated. Would you consider? I mean, I have space now. A real guest room. You could. He shook his head gently. That's kind, son. But I'm where I need to be. This life, it suits me. And I think you understand now why that's okay. I did understand. Finally. Completely. Freedom wasn't about having everything. It was about wanting what you had. About choosing presence over possession. About measuring wealth in moments, not money. Will I see you again? I asked. Maybe. Maybe not. But you don't need to see me, do you? You've got what you need. He tapped his chest, right over his heart. It's in here now. And when you sit on this bench, or when you talk to your father, or when you see one of your students really understand something, you'll feel it. That connection. That reminder of what matters. He started to walk away, then turned back. One more thing. Yeah? When you see someone who looks lost, someone sitting alone, looking like they're drowning, share your sandwich. Whatever that means. Your time. Your story. Your presence. Because that's how it works. That's how the light stays alive in this world. We pass it from person to person, moment to moment, heart to heart. His eyes twinkled. Promise me. I promise. He nodded, satisfied. Then he walked away, his new coat warm around his shoulders, the photograph tucked safely in his pocket next to Martha's. I watched him go until he disappeared around the bend in the path. And I felt, for the first time in my entire adult life, complete peace. That was 5 years ago. I still teach. Still write. I still have dinner with my father every week. Still living in that apartment with plants and photos and evidence of a life being lived. And every Tuesday I sit on that bench. I've met a lot of people there over the years. Other lonely souls. Other lost people. Other versions of who I used to be. And when I see them, I do what Samuel did. I share my sandwich. Sometimes it's actual food. Sometimes it's a conversation. Sometimes it's just sitting together in companionable silence, reminding each other that we're not alone. I haven't seen Samuel since that day 5 years ago. I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's even still alive. But it doesn't matter. Because he's alive in me. In the choices I make. In the way I see people. In the life I'm living, not perfectly, not without struggle, but really living. Present. Connected. Awake. And every time I help someone, every time I witness someone, every time I choose connection over isolation, I feel him there. A gentle hand on my shoulder. A voice saying, "You're doing it, son. You're seeing them." And I smile. Because I understand now what he tried to tell me that first day. Having nothing and giving everything, they're the same thing. When you strip away all the armor, all the possessions, all the performance, what's left is love in its purest form. The kind that costs you something. The kind that changes you. The kind that saves you, even as you're trying to save someone else. That's the secret. That's what the old man on the park bench taught me. He had nothing. Yet he gave me everything. We measure our lives by the wrong things. Not by what we accumulate, but by what we give away. Not by what we achieve, but by who we become. Not by how high we climb, but by how many hands we reach down to lift up. The richest person you'll ever meet might be sitting on a park bench with nothing but a paper bag and a smile. And if you're brave enough to sit beside them, brave enough to be seen, brave enough to see them back, you might just discover that everything you've been searching for was there all along. In the giving. In the sharing. In the beautiful, terrifying, sacred act of being fully, courageously human. Pause. Who's your Samuel? And more importantly, who needs you to be theirs? If you love this story, kindly drop a positive comment down in our comments box. Also hit the like and subscribe button, plus turn on your notification bell so you don't miss out on my videos like this. You'll definitely love our other stories and the lessons to learn from them. See you in our next video.